All right, we now welcome on NBA Draft Guru. Is that okay to say?
Sure. You can
And
define me however you want. You could title me
he's
however you want.
he's the new VP of 247 Sports. Adam Stanco. Adam, how are you?
Great. I'm great. I'm excited to be doing this podcast with you guys.
I appreciate you coming on. So let's start this off. How'd you end up as the VP of 247?
I guess there's a long version and probably a longer version of that. I don't, I'm still asking myself that question. I think, my family and certainly my friends are too. I could tell you that much. I spent the last, I bounced around for my career, started out as a local news reporter in Topeka, Kansas. Got a job shortly after that with a high school sports show in Philly. That was always something I was extremely interested in, the recruiting game, all that. This is early 2000s. So guys like LeBron, I was covering a lot, or Carmelo Anthony. On the football side, they called him Vincent Young, not Vince Young at the time. But so I was working on that show, loved it. It was amazing. The show ended. For a while. I was selling high school tapes then to college and NBA teams because no one was really doing that then. There's no YouTube or, social media outlets where people could see video of these guys. So we'd be going all over and shooting tapes of guys and selling them. It was just sort of keep me on my feet. Eventually was taking some odd jobs and got a producer job in Philly for a show that actually aired in Northern California. From there, I went to ESPN for 7 years and then left to go to the Pac-12 network here in the Bay Area, which is where I still am, just about to leave. And coordinating producer now, Pac-12. And actually, the crazy part was for the last year at the Pac-12, they had laid off my colleagues. So everybody that worked underneath me, all the producers, associated producers, PAs, all got laid off, and so did my boss. And they basically told me, like, hey, go figure it out. You're the only one. So I'm was the last standing full-time employee at the Pac-12 network on the studio production side. And we had a bunch of freelancers, super talented people. Pac-12's gotten a bad rap the last few years, but some of it earned, but for a large part, it's been a great place to work. And then, I don't know. It was crazy. I talked to CBS about another job, discussed it with them. It didn't work out. And then a few months later, they said, hey, there's this position here. We want to start a network and we need somebody to run it. Would you be interested? And that sort of started the ball rolling. I officially applied and then had 15 interviews, wow, which was crazy. I never dealt with anything like that. Crazy 3-week stretch, I can tell you that much, because I'm also very, very, just like the draft research and all that kind of stuff. If I'm focused on something and interested, and this doesn't apply to everything, if you go back and look at my high school grades, but when I do focus and get interested, I will do a deep dive and really try to dominate the process as much as I can. So I really did a lot of research on the people I'd be interviewing with and the company, and it's so nuanced and they do so much. And I was a fan from afar, just so the opportunity, I did not want to let it slip. I want to do everything I possibly could to, at my part of the process. And so I feel very lucky and fortunate that it worked out. And I'm kind of shocked that I'm in the position I'm in, but now the whole family's moving to Nashville.
That's exciting. First of all, congratulations on the new position. But second of all, I wanted to ask, if you had to choose one or two people like throughout your entire career path that made a huge impact on you or helped you get where you are today, is there anybody that comes to the top of your head that you want to give a shout out to?
Oh man. I really appreciate that you asking me that. It's funny because I think if anyone knows me and they heard you ask that question, they would just start laughing, because like even my goodbye letter for Pac-12, I ended up listing like 40 people. So I'm certainly not going to do that, because I always feel bad about not including people. And really so many people did play a part, but I will say, one person that I always think about on the career side, I was this guy by the name of Don Kimberly. He passed away a few years ago, but he was unbelievable. He was a producer on this high school sports show. And what was wild was, so I grew up outside of Philadelphia, Westchester, PA. And when I was in college in New York, Ithaca College in New York, I got this internship. There was this small, at the time, they don't have it really anymore, but there's a local cable news company. Now, like, they're all dominated by, everybody has Comcast or Dish or what have you. But there were it was like a mom and pop shop, like, and so it's Heron Cable in Pennsylvania. It was wild, competing with Comcast, and Comcast ended up taking over. But it's weird. People would think about it as Heron Cable if they had been the one that that took over. But because they had this local cable company, they decided they wanted to put some of their own programming on the air, and they had this local news magazine show and just asked local people to contribute. And like, they didn't know what they were doing. I mean, there was like some 22-year-old woman who sort of was running the thing and everything. And I walked in there one day and just asked if I could contribute. Yeah. And so I spent a summer with them putting together, stories, and they allowed me to just go out, learn. I spent a couple of years there actually doing it, a couple summers, but it was wild. It was the best experience ever. They just sort of let me go with a camera and a camera guy and an editor and just sort of learn the ropes. And I didn't know what I was doing. I was trying to have some fun, and I learned a lot along the way. But I don't know, this guy Don saw something in me because he was working on this local high school sports show that we had in Philly. And he would take stories he was working on and he would put them on this local news magazine show also. And so he just loved the craft of it, loved to be involved. So we never even met or crossed paths, but I saw what he was doing. And at the time, like the local athletes, I mean, like Kobe Bryant was huge. He's putting a lot of Kobe stories on there and everything. It was really cool. So anyway, a lot of the footage you see now from Kobe's high school days, that's where it all came from, and everything was this high school sports show. So what happened was when, anyway, it's a long way of saying, like, I go to Topeka, I get this job. I'm working for this awful boss, and they're treating me like garbage. And I'm learning a ton though, like just about the business and how to write for TV and do all these things. Really talented people in Topeka. It was amazing, but the boss that I had was terrible. And then all of a sudden my buddy like reaches out one day and was like, "Hey, I was talking to Don here, and he was wondering if you'd be interested in like coming back to Philly." So I'm in Topeka, and he's wondering if you'd come back to Philly, work on this high school sports show that they're about to take national and host and produce it. And I'm like, what are you doing? This is amazing. I'm making $7.69 an hour as a news reporter, one-man band, lugging my stuff. And I was like, yes, I'll crawl back there. So my boss at the time cussed me out and literally like went into a room, told him I was leaving. He screamed at me and cursed at me, all these things, and said, okay, that
solidified your decision a little bit.
I mean, there was never even a question, and I couldn't get there quick enough. He actually told everybody that he was going to call my future employer and say about, which that freaked me out, but of course nothing happened. But yeah, so Don, and then just working with him. I mean, he was in his 60s and I was in my early 20s. He was just this great mentor, and for no reason, like he saw something in me. So that alone was amazing. But then just working alongside him and just the kind of person he was and the character he had, and he always like was looking out for me. And I always thought that was just amazing to me, and meant so much. And man, there have been so many other people. But there, another guy who, I would also point out is a good friend of mine named Ron Burke, who, when I was in Philly working on a show producing there, he just taught me how to be a pro. He was an anchor for Comcast Sportsnet in Philly at the time, and was like a legendary anchor. And he'd done stuff in the Philly area, and he was, again, a bit older than me, but he just was such a pro, just excellent at what he did, and just how he approached the job, and just taught me like that. Hey, it's not, you don't come here to play around, like have fun. He always came with a smile. He had the best attitude no matter what the situation. And I sort of try to pattern that. But also he said, hey, if you treat it like it's a playground and just joke around, like not joke around, but if you don't take the craft seriously, then you're never going to do anything with it, and people aren't going to respect you. And I always appreciated that approach, and we became really close friends, and he was a great mentor. So yeah, and he's now doing news and sports in New Mexico. Just sort of wanted to change in his life, but he's been awesome. So I appreciate you asking that. And there've been so many others through the years I'd mentioned, of course, personally and all that kind of stuff. My dad's my idol, but my parents have been amazing, my wife, but I would say in general, like those two people professionally, I think have been huge. So thank you for asking that.
Yeah, no problem.
All right, let's start the NBA draft talk.
There you go.
Who's going 1, and do you believe they should go 1?
Cade Cunningham's going first overall. And so I've said this, I wouldn't be shocked if Detroit decided to deal the pick, right? Mm-hmm. That could happen. Cade's going to go first just because his value. So you always look at the value at number 1 and how people are appreciated. And so again, if Detroit's in a position where they don't feel like Cade's the guy, and maybe they are, I don't know that for sure, but the consensus is that Cade's the guy. And so because of that, like you could theoretically have a situation where we saw with Philly and Boston a few years ago where they trade down a couple picks if there's someone else that they absolutely love, or they feel like a few of the tier one guys, let's say, are on equal footing. Then I could see that happening. Try to get some more assets for the number one pick. But you think about what Detroit has already with Sadiq Bey getting a chance to, play for, Team USA, just got the call of him. He's been unbelievable. Isaiah Stewart, like they already have this young core, Killian Hayes, that's in place. They're already drafting well. Troy Weaver's doing a nice job there. And of course, Grant too. They have young pieces and a lot of potential, and now having a lead guard. And I say this about Cade. The thing for me that puts him on another plane is I think he has this one rare trait that never gets discussed, and that's the idea that he controls the pace of the game. And I think that you just don't see that in prospects very often, and in just players in general. I mean, Chris Paul. When Chris Paul is in the game, you see the difference. The Suns, how they play. Harden's kind of like that. It's just the guys that obviously LeBron, but just guys that all of a sudden the game just slows down, and then they just decide the pace that they're going to play. And I think that ability to control the game and that poise, I don't want to say it's innate, but it's awfully tough to teach and coach. And it's not really even something you develop once you get to the league. Like, you already sort of have it growing up. People talk about being a pure point guard or something, or a great shooter. Like even those things, I think on some level, like, can be adjusted. But somebody Luka is obviously a prime example of that. Guys that just sort of say, we're going to settle things down right now. I'm just going to control the pace. You just don't see that. And so that's why I put Cade on that top tier above all the other prospects in this draft.
Mm-hmm. So speaking of the other prospects, about every mock draft I've seen, or everybody I've talked to, thinks Jalen Green's going right after that. Mm-hmm. What do you think the comparison between them is? Who do you think will have the better career, or who's the better pick in your opinion?
Oh, I think I'm not as high on Jalen Green as others are. I mean, obviously he's, a prototype wing and really has a lot of ability to score at the next level. We know that. He's proven himself. G League Ignite. I think there's a lot of reasons to be excited about Jalen Green for sure. I would call him, a fringe tier one prospect if it's me. And by tier one, I refer to, and I've told Chad before this, he's the one that introduced me to this idea that, like, NBA teams have been doing for a long time, but instead of sort of saying, like, who would you take, this guy or this guy, it's almost like we put them into tiers, and then you could start to get into the game of, like, who fits the mold better. But you talk about tier ones, you're talking about multi-time all-star, potential Hall of Fame type guy, like franchise changing difference makers. And obviously Jalen Green, what he did at the high school level, and then of course going off to do what he did with the Ignite team, I mean, has been extremely impressive, and his athletic ability is great. You hear about the work ethic. I've talked to some people who sort of feel the same way I do, where they don't know that he's definitely a superstar. Like, I have no questions about Cade Cunningham being a star at the next level. And, we could always be wrong. I also feel that way about Jalen Suggs. And we could discuss Evan Mobley too. But the idea for me is that I don't know that I put Jalen Green there. Now, if he reaches his potential, or even close to what his potential is, we're talking about a dynamic scorer at the next level, a guy that's scoring 20, 25 points a game, a guy that can shoot from the outside, that is, is really your the primary guy in your offense, and then defensively gets after it too. So, I think he does have great potential. So I don't want to say that, I think he's going to be a bust or anything like that. I'm not trying to say that. To me, I actually don't have him on Cade's level, and I don't even have him on Jalen Suggs' level. Now, I don't think the Rockets feel the same way. They apparently are pretty high on him, and I think there's still a choice to be made between him and Evan Mobley. And I think Jalen Green has some more buzz about him just as a prospect, and sort of for where the franchise is going, where they want to go. And it'll be interesting because now, you have a better idea when you know who is running a front office for a period of time. It gives you a better sense of, like, okay, I think I have an idea of who these guys like, or who they would go with in this situation. It's tough to say, with Houston's new front office, like, we just don't know where they're at. And so even in terms of, like, the information that comes out of that, what benefits them, what doesn't. So it could be that, everyone's been talking about Jalen Green. He's presumptive favorite to go in that 2 spot. And maybe that's just what ends up happening, but it could also go the flip side and we could be surprised and it could be someone else there.
If Jalen Green goes to college, do you think he's more likely to be a number 1 pick?
It's such a great question. I think in some ways, I think he is more likely. I think it's weird because I think you can answer the question and say, I think he's more likely, but I also think it benefits him to go to the Ignite. I mean, the thing is, like, if prospects are smart, and a lot of these guys really gotten to speak to them or talk to the guys who work them out or what have you, and really, if prospects are smart about the process, and usually that's the more mature, older guys, they understand it. They should want to go to a place that they're going to succeed at the next level, not just get drafted the highest. And that it's a huge distinction. And I think that, even a lot of fans like don't say that, and they sit there and go, oh, well, it's better for this guy. Well, every situation determines there's other factors that are going to determine your success. The other guys, what does the position look like? What's your depth chart essentially look like there? Are you going to get the ball early in your career? Are you going to play a lot early in your career? Does the coaching staff believe in you? Does the front office believe in you? Do you have people that are championing in your cause? Like, all those things factor into your success. So that being said, like, yeah, I mean, Jalen Green's exposure to the average fan would have been greater, obviously. I think there's no question. I mean, people knew about how great he was coming out of high school. And so if he goes to college and now all of a sudden is exploding on the national stage, has a great tournament run, but even before that, just has major success in nationally televised games. I mean, that's the selling point. It has been for a long time for guys to play in college because you get free marketing. And now you got name, image, likeness stuff where not only, is the marketing benefiting, you as a prospect, it's also going to benefit you financially. But I think that in general, I think you bring up a great point. If Jalen Green goes to college, we're going to see his profile raise and all those things. We would have seen him maybe competing at number 1 on mock drafts and all those things. But I also think there's something about Cade that's just, like I said, for me personally is just special. And plus now we're talking about Jalen Green goes to Ignite. He's now number 2, maybe on mock drafts. And obviously it looks like at least he'll go top 3, top 4. So let's just say he does go to college. What if, he's also going to get scrutinized more than he, by the public. Obviously scouts are watching every second of his tape with the Ignite, but, limited amount of games to check out. But if he goes to college, the reverse could also be true. He could have gone through a stretch where he struggled or what have you. And now guys start to question, or he plays in other high profile games or he's playing against other prospects and, has a couple of bad performances. And that could have also, the reverse could have been true. So it's possible. And I think, in fact, in some ways, maybe, because of his talent, probably does compete for number 1. But for me personally, I don't think it would have changed my opinion that Cade's a top prospect.
I remember watching those G League Ignite games. I was like, whoa, wait, Jarrett Jack?
Yeah, exactly. That's the first reaction you have, right? You're like, this guy's slant. But think about what that does for you, that you spend a year playing alongside a guy like Jarrett Jack and his experience and all the things he's going to teach you. So, the other thing, a lot of these guys too, I've talked about this a bit, but, I'm close friends. I'm lucky enough to become close friends with Don McLean, who, I mean, you guys may not even remember, but he played 10 years in the league, was most improved player his second year. Played with the Washington Bullets, played with the Sonics and Nuggets and Sixers. But Don's UCLA's all-time leading scorer, 2,608 points. He is Pac-12's all-time leading scorer, and he's now the top workout guy in the country. I mean, he doesn't do it as his full-time gig. He's an analyst with the Clippers and Pac-12 Network and such. But over the summer, as soon as the college season ends, CAA sends their prospects to him to improve their standing among teams when they go and get ready for team workouts, right? So that's Don's job. Hey, you got the next 6 weeks and work with these guys. And he's worked with everybody. And I've gone to the gym and seen all these guys. Donovan Mitchell, John Collins, D'Angelo Russell, Devin Booker, Karl Anthony Towns. Like, the list just goes on and on and on. Don works these guys out. And it's incredible, the development that the jump that they can make and the leap that they can make. But one thing that Don says all the time, we can discuss it more, but the one thing that Don says all the time about about these guys is he's a lot of times just getting them ready once they reach a certain point. He's getting them ready for summer league, because really guys get drafted and then it's like, the general public forgets about it. They don't even remember where a guy was drafted, who he was drafted to. Now it's about, okay, what kind of impact can you make and how quickly can you make it? Because that's going to determine the fate of your career. And especially for these kids who, for the most part, all the one and dones are 19 years old. So, for these guys, it's so important to make an impact. And then the clock's ticking. You got 3 years for the team to figure out if they're going to keep you around. And if you don't make an impact early on, at 19 years old, it's tough, to start making an impact, which would have been your sophomore, junior, senior year in college. Trae Young be a senior in college, it's like, it's nuts to, think about that. Like, so anyway, I do think that, like, it's interesting that you mentioned Jarrett Jack, because I think playing alongside a guy like that and getting that experience and talking to those guys about, talking to Kuminga and him about, this is what you need to know. This is how you defend guys. This is how you look at a scouting report and then make your own determinations. Those kinds of things, I think, plays a big role moving forward.
So we talked about Jalen Green and the G League Ignite and Jonathan Kuminga now. Do you think that becomes more popular, those alternative routes instead of the NCAA, such as, the G League or the NBL or another professional league?
It's been the question that's swirled around forever, and we've thought so, as guys have, Brandon Jennings goes and plays overseas. Jeremy Tyler leaves San Diego High School and goes after his junior year and goes overseas. And it's always like, this is going to start, the mass exodus, right? And then you see LaMelo Ball go and play overseas. And then now with the guys going, obviously, you playing with the Ignite. I think the one thing is, two things have had to change over the last few years in order for that to happen. Is that one, the NBA was going to have to do something about their farm system, unlike Major League Baseball, which has this great setup in terms of looking out for the kids themselves, right? You get drafted out of high school and then you're in college for 3 years, you make that commitment. Then you can draft it again after your junior year, draft it again your senior year. But they have these expansive programs in place for the minor leagues. I mean, obviously it's crazy, but the NBA has never really invested in their G League. Now they're starting to, so that's changing. So yes, you can make that argument, but on the flip side, you're also seeing this name, image, likeness, which could completely change the game. I mean, that Olympic model for how guys can earn a living in college is, I think, going to change the game completely. And at the end of the day, the NBA doesn't want to invest more money in the G League. Now they know it's beneficial to them, but if college is doing its part, again, think about we talked about, like, the idea that the national TV exposure and that we learn about guys that aren't even NBA prospects. So think about the guy, what it did for Zion Williamson, even John Morant playing at Murray State, like the idea of his exposure and stuff. And not that those guys didn't earn it. I'm just saying in general terms, like, I've been on this radio show. This guy has me on every few weeks. And every time he has me on, he's like, Trae Young, he's like, he's a guy who played 4 years in college. Every time he says it. And it's like, I know that was the impact because he led the country at scoring and assists, but he only played 1 year at Oklahoma. It's easy to think that he played longer. But I think college basketball is so good at marketing these guys and all that I think in one way, if we didn't see NIL pop like it did and everything change overnight in a way, I mean, obviously it didn't. It took a long time, but if we didn't see that change, then I would say absolutely. And I think also we would see, these guys, get talked about this year. I think in the future, all of a sudden, those guys playing higher profile games. I mean, it's right around the corner from me here at Walnut Creek. The Ignite team, it's on the East Bay. I'm North Bay, but I do think it would have, I think it would have been a much bigger deal, but I think because the NIL now, again, college basketball has a leg up. So yeah, I think prospects are going to do it, and you're seeing overtime elite and guys getting paid out of high school. So definitely alternate routes, I think, are going to be, to answer your question, I mean, yes, we're going to see more guys take alternate routes, whether it's overseas, whether it's in startup leagues, whether it's with the G League. But I think also, I don't think it's going to be as crazy as it once was, because I think a lot of these guys are going to go, I can go to Duke or Carolina or Kentucky for a year, and then my profile's great. I still am going to make some money, be financially sound, so maybe I'm okay. And also these guys getting paid out of high school, and then you can sort of say they're not losing eligibility at the college level. So that's another role that it'll play. But I mean, I think it's a great question though.
Players were definitely not getting paid during college. Ever.
No, it's never happened. It's never happened at all.
But I love Jalen Suggs. Where's the best fit for him?
I love Jalen Suggs too. I'd say, I mean, honestly, for me, it's anywhere. Like I absolutely love this kid. I want to see him have the ball in his hands from day one. I think any team that drafts him would be smart enough to do that. I'm with you. I mean, there's a few things that stand out. I mean, he's extremely competitive. He's obviously a terrific athlete. He's strong. I love his poise. And he has a couple of things that, if you notice on tape, that I think just jump out at you. So first of all, like when he gets the ball on the wing, for instance, he doesn't even look to see he doesn't care about his primary defender. He's looking for where the help's coming from. And if you don't have help on the block or even quick enough coming from the weak side, like he just attacks the rim right away. And he's going to either score on a pull-up, a floater, or just get to the hole. And I think that is huge. That's next level scoring ability that like elite scorers have and has sort of have that understanding. He just dismisses the guy that's guarding him. And all great scorers sort of have that ability. Obviously, he can score at all three levels. He shoots it better than I think he gets credit for. But then obviously the vision is awesome. And that's what I also love. I mean, not only is he a standout athlete and just a phenomenal prospect in that regard, but like his vision is crazy. And then, the play that I think will always stand out. I mean, I think stock oftentimes gets put too heavily onto, what happens in the NCAA tournament. But I think for people that saw, less than 2 minutes left against UCLA, when he throws that, I mean, he has to block first
through the middle,
and then he throws that like 3/4 court bounce pass, one-handed. Like that's bananas. Like to throw it in that situation is nuts. To even think that you could do that. But the thing is, because of his high school quarterback background, it's like he understands the value of taking care of the ball. You don't turn the ball over when you're a quarterback. You get crushed for turning it over 3 times in a game. Meanwhile, as a point guard, you can get away with that. And so, you have 9 assists, 3 turnovers, 3-to-1 assist to turnover ratio. You're getting praised for that. But meanwhile, so I think the kid has a great understanding of that, like how to take care of the basketball. And so to me, you're talking about like classic lead guard and just like all great players. And I think he will be. I think you're talking about an elite prospect. I think he's going to be a 8-10-time All-Star. Like I expect that from him. And when you have a guy like that, I think that you have to snatch him. And so that's what, I mean, to me, Cade Cunningham and Jalen Suggs are my 2 favorite prospects in this draft. And I think the world of him. And I think you give him the ball right away and you say, all right, we're going to build around him. And just like all great prospects, I was going to say, there's almost like no great comparison. Like there are guys that you can say he reminds you of, but it's like, I've heard, you hear Jason Kidd or Russell Westbrook and these other comparisons, but like nothing feels right because he's unique. And I sort of love that about him too.
Yeah. He kind of has the, oh, sorry, you go ahead.
I got it. Well, I was gonna say we've talked about the like some of the top prospects so far this year, and I've heard a lot of people say that this year's draft is a lot stronger than, let's say, last year's. What are your opinions on that? Is it a deeper draft position wise, like compared to last year's draft? What do you kind of feel?
It's interesting because people always bring that up. The idea, like you hear every year, it's seemingly like, oh, it's a weak draft, it's a weak draft, it's a weak draft. I think part of it, like, also comes from the general public of like them not knowing the prospects as well. So I think that's a big deal. In a weird way, you had such a unique situation this year, especially the top guys that we mentioned, because like, Jalen Green was thought of as like the guy coming out of high school. Like everyone sort of had him as the guy. And then all of a sudden it was, he goes to the Ignite team. So that got a lot of buzz. And then Jalen Suggs became the guy on the college level and has obviously, Gonzaga goes undefeated throughout the, most of the year and then has the great, tournament run. And so there his profile gets raised there. And Cade, obviously, with Oklahoma State, wasn't even going to play in the tournament and all these things. And he still decides to go to Oklahoma State. So it's almost like these narratives were forming and all this kind of stuff. But all that being said, like, last year's draft, a lot of times too, I think guys sort of look at what are the first 5 kind of prospects, and you get into that kind of game. And it's interesting because I think different years, opinions get formed when in actuality, like, the year, I want to say it was 2017 when like everybody was putting Lonzo Ball and Markelle Fultz in like they're good. And they were talking about that year's draft and they're putting him on a plane. Like, I was like, I'm not even a fan of Lonzo Ball and Markelle Fultz. Like, you go back and look, I mean, I got the receipts. I'm like, hey, Jason Tatum should be the top pick in this draft. I knew Donovan Mitchell, went to see him work out. And I was like, he should be in that discussion for one of the top picks. You're talking about a superstar also there. Guys like, Lauri Markkanen, Jonathan Isaac, I knew you would be difference makers in time. So like, John Collins, I think
we saw your Giannis tweets.
There you go. Giannis. Exactly. Yeah, of course. I mean, sometimes you have to listen. I think it's huge to take a stand and go against what the general public thinks a lot of times. But the point that I'm getting at is not to, as I've been criticized for, patting myself on the back. But the point is ultimately that with a lot of these, this time, the consensus sort of forms. I'm glad you guys asked the question, because the consensus sort of forms and people will just look at the top few picks and go like, I know those names. So it's a strong draft or it's a weak draft. Whereas I look at it like, all right, first of all, how many tier 1 guys do you have? Last year, I didn't know if we'd be looking at them. And like my favorite player in last year's draft was Sadiq Bey. And I thought LaMelo would be really good. I didn't know he'd be allowed to do what he was able to do. Obviously, LaMelo, not only a tier 1 guy, but you're talking about generational now. Like what his ceiling could be is just bananas. And I'd heard that coming out and I didn't know if I believed it. And that was my assessment. And now it's like, okay, I see it now. Like, and everyone I was talking to told me the same thing. Don actually worked out LaMelo the year before. When he was still in high school, he came over and had worked out some, and he was like beating KZ Okpala, who ended up being was supposed to be a first round pick, ended up falling to the second round. He's with the Miami Heat, but like he was a stud at Stanford. His potential was great. And like, he's taking it to KZ, like just in limited time, like just playing against each other. So I knew the LaMelo potential was there for, guys like Don. And then this guy that I know, Matt Walsh, who was a star at Florida. Matt now owns
the Breakers.
He's part owner of the NC Breakers. Exactly. Yeah. Good knowledge there. So Matt's a friend of mine. And so Matt had told me, I talked to Matt about LaMelo, and he's like, dude, he's the real deal. Like, he is legit. And so again, when you're hearing from people that you trust, and I still was like, okay, I see it, but is he going to be able to do that at that level? And then Coach Nick, a B-ball breakdown. I don't know if you guys know Coach Nick, but he'd be a great guy to have on. But Coach Nick was the same way. Like, he's like, man, looking at the tape, like, I love LaMelo. So people I trust were telling me. But the point is, in general, like, I just didn't feel like there were many like tier 1 guys like in last year's draft. And then you start to get into okay, how deep is the draft? Now starts to become the question of, all right, how many other guys can be sort of impact players? There are other guys you can like or whatever, but that was the thing. This year's draft, it's like, wow. First of all, I think there's a few guys that tier 1 you're talking about that could really be multiple time all-stars that like stand out right away. And then beyond that, you start to get into other names where you're like, well, if things break right for these guys, they're also going to be great at the next level. And so, I got a chance to see Keon Johnson and Davion Mitchell work out when I went to the workouts that Don had this year. I love Scotty Barnes, obviously. I mean, you mentioned Kuminga, which, jury's out. Some people feel like the guy never passes, and other people feel like it doesn't matter. He's an elite scorer. I mean, you just go down the list, and then other guys, even like Zaire Williams, who didn't have the freshman year I think a lot of people expected, but what kind of potential he has, also seeing what he did out of high school. So I think you go across the board and say, like, man, this draft could be really surprising. And not to mention like some of the standout college guys that Sumu and guys like that Jeremiah Robinson Earl, that like really could end up being outstanding players at the next level that you could get later in this draft. So I love this draft. Certain years I like it when other people don't, and I fall in love with a lot of the kids anyway. But I would say that for this year's draft, I think a lot of guys at the top, and then a lot of depth in terms of when you go second tier and guys that could really benefit teams down the road.
So we're massive Hornets fans. Who do you see our sweet Hornets drafting?
And so we have to agree that they're sweet Hornets.
Yes.
Well, they didn't screw up LaMelo. We thought they were going to screw up that pick and not take him.
Well, who do you guys want them to take? Let's start there.
Has Frank Kaminsky had a kid yet?
Is there another Zeller?
No, exactly. Vonleh, are you there? No. I like Corey Kispert and Kai Jones for us.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard I would love Kai Jones, and I wouldn't mind Corey Kispert either, but I've seen a lot of mock drafts saying Franz Wagner, and I just I don't know if I'm sold on that or not.
That scares me. That scares me. I'm
Dude.
not. Listen, I think Franz Wagner down the road could be like a serviceable player. I don't get the hype for him. I don't understand. I mean, I've heard different things. People, why they love him. Like, I get, like, he moves well and all that kind of stuff, but you see guys like that quite a bit.
We've been down this road as a Hornets fan.
No doubt. I mean, and listen, exactly. And he feels like a Hornets draft pick, doesn't he? I mean, kind of like, no offense to you guys. I'm saying, like, hopefully we're seeing
no, we know
regime change here. But no, I mean, to me, it's about, like, who goes in that territory. So I sort of look and say, yeah, obviously Kai Jones, if he's there, could be awesome for you guys and an exciting pick for sure. And no question about it. And, like, instantly you start saying, like, who could play with LaMelo and stuff. I mean, Davion Mitchell, who I've already said, I said on Chad Ford's podcast, and it picked up steam because I don't think people had heard it as much before, is that the Warriors love him. So that's a big deal right now. And I know that the Warriors absolutely love Davion Mitchell. And so I'd be surprised if he even slips past 7 for the Warriors. And maybe there's a disagreement among people within the organization, and maybe that happens. Certain people overrule others, and so or they go back and make a different assessment. But assuming, like, Davion Mitchell were to slip to you guys, I mean, just what he brings to the table, defensively. And then to think, I'm always interested in, like, backcourt combinations, which could be really interesting. Now, I know you guys are also in a unique position because you do have some depth in the backcourt and all that kind of thing. So it's like, do we need, another guard back there? Having a shooter and Corey Kispert playing alongside a LaMelo Ball, knowing that when you have a great player that attracts so much attention, and LaMelo's got that vision, it'd be so awesome to have a guy like that. So I almost wonder if that's too high for Corey Kispert, if you get that value later. But when you have that kind of shooter, and he's special as a shooter, plus has great size and strength and really knows how to play. He's a ready-made pro coming in. If Keon Johnson were to slip, another guy that defensively is going to get after it right away, I'd be excited about. I mean, there's a handful of guys, even the thought of Zaire Williams, like, with him hitting his peak, if that was a pick, I'd be excited for you guys. So basically what I'm saying, I think, is anybody but Franz Wagner. I'm excited about if I'm a Hornets fan.
We've always been drafting big men. Like, obviously that's our area of need right now, I think.
And I know. The thing is that, I mean, that's why, I mean, obviously Kai Jones makes sense, but I also think in a draft like this, the question is, if you have a chance to get a really talented kid, why not start building your foundation? You've already established LaMelo is your identity right now. Yeah. And so I think everything starts and ends with that. And so to me, when you could start to collect core pieces, I think that's sort of the way you look. I mean, a couple of years ago, the Hornets were in such bad shape because they had all these bad contracts. There was really no way to get out of it. I felt like, there was just not a lot of leadership from the front office, clearly. And we saw that with, like, draft picks where they were just sort of guessing, or no clear vision.
Doomed to mediocrity. That's the
doomed to mediocrity.
Doomed to mediocrity. And that happens. And the thing is, like I always say, it's an executives league. Like, everyone talks about it being a players league, but I look at it the other way, that, like, great executives get you out of bad cap situations. They clear cap space. They make decisions a year or two before the fans are on board with the decision, right? Like, and so the same guys have success over and over again. So whether it's, obviously the Spurs are trying to get back up there, but, like, you think about RC Buford with the Spurs, or what Sam Presti's done with Oklahoma City, or, Daryl Morey goes from Houston and then goes to Philly and makes some major changes there. What Danny Ainge had done, in Boston, and the moves that I talk about are different. Like, in Boston, when, like, Isaiah Thomas is, this darling of the city, but he's injured and all that, he turns an Isaiah Thomas into a Kyrie Irving, which, you can make the determination about how that sort of went. But again, Jason Tatum, he loves Jason Tatum. So what does he do? Ends up trading with the Sixers, and Sixers get Markelle Fultz, and the Celtics get Tatum at 3 plus get assets. It's like, or Avery Bradley, they trade a year before he's due to make a lot of money, and so having that vision and foresight puts you in great position. And so I think I say all that to say, with the Hornets, like, I look at it like, you have LaMelo Ball and you Devontae Graham, and then
Rozier still.
Rozier's there. I think that you have some young core pieces that are exciting. And to me, I still believe you're high enough in the draft that you take a guy that you feel is like the most talented guy, if you can get him on the floor.
Yeah.
And then it's not just a question of figuring out for now. I'm looking at next year, 2 years from now, with what am I building long term around LaMelo? Like I'm not winning a championship next year. So it's like, I don't feel necessarily have to draft for need. I know it's offensive to both of you guys, and I'm sorry for that. But
that's playoffs like this where everyone gets hurt.
Well, yeah, exactly. It was Suns and the Bucks. I mean, that's how I sort of approach it. If I'm in the front office, my approach is I'm taking the kid that's the best player that I can get on the floor, not necessarily best player that's also positional need, which I think is a different way to also look at it. And I think you're high enough in a draft like this where you can still get that. So yes, obviously Kispert would be great, and Kai Jones maybe fits the best for you, but I'd want to see, all right, does that make the most sense long term? I mean, if I get one of those other guys we're discussing that sort of slips, does it make sense though if I could have a guy like what I think Keon Johnson could be in 2 years? Because I think about what he could be alongside LaMelo, and then you start to think of the other pieces that are there. You have some exciting pieces in Charlotte. It's just, I don't know that those pieces all fit. So moves have to be made anyway. And so I look at it like, wait, I don't know, this is the team in 5 years. Who are they going to be the best guys alongside LaMelo in 5 years? That's how I sort of look at it.
Who's your biggest sleeper?
I mean, everybody's talking about, Bones Highland right now. I got to give my guy Combo, does a podcast, Combo's Court. He's been hyping up Bones forever. So he's been talking about him, and everybody you talk to about the draft for the last few months, he's like, what do you think of Bones Highland? And everybody's like, I don't know. I mean, it could be a good second round pick if he's in this year's draft. Maybe makes sense. And now all of a sudden we see what happens at the combine. That kid's got tons of buzz, and now we're seeing him just move up. So that's been huge. If you call, I don't know that I again, call Zaire Williams a sleeper, especially because of the attention that he's had. I would say, two guys that I think, well, I'll give you a few. So let's say Sharif Cooper from Auburn.
Okay.
Extremely productive. Obviously didn't get a chance to start the year. And I love his handle, love his work ethic. I think he's just going to make teams better. He could be a kid that gets an opportunity and really explodes. So if you're talking about a guy like that who'd been talking about first round love for a while, obviously he's undersized. Obviously there's question marks there, but you see some of the success for guards that dominate. I mean, you look around the league, one of the things I've looked at is for the lead guards, did they have a chance at the college level to really have the ball in their hands and really just go out and do everything and dominate? So, and look, no matter where you play, it's something about reading a defense and also working through double teams. And when you get the attention of every other team's best defensive effort, think about the guys in the league. Steph Curry did it at Davidson. Dame Lillard, obviously, Weber State. You have, why am I drawing a blank on some others who have had major success, but Trey Young, great example, again. So you look at Trey, and again, not saying that guys have to come from mid majors, but and even CJ McCollum playing,
whoa. We don't talk about CJ McCollum on this podcast.
I love CJ McCollum Lehigh.
Oh,
I was at that Lehigh game as a Duke fan. That was brutal.
Yeah. No offense. And listen, am I allowed to talk about Eric Maynard? Is that possible either? I'm just asking. Listen. I there are a lot of I want to come to Cameron. I want to catch a game. I love Duke too. I quietly love Duke too. So I have to say, I will say this, that but that's the thing with Sharif Cooper. I would say that I would point out. Isaiah Jackson, if he can figure it out athletically, is a freak show. So he could be a guy that down the road could be one of those guys that blows people away. And then let me give you one, and let me just throw out here for fun. I don't know. Let's see.
Matt Hurt.
No. I do not. You know who's a guy I like is and it'll be interesting to see where he goes. But Charles Bassey from Western Kentucky would be another interesting name. I mean, his game doesn't really fit the modern NBA, so there's that. But I think he could be one of those guys that really impresses. He's got good hands. He knows how to steal his man. He rebounds well. There's a lot about Charles Bassey. He's dealt with some injury issues and stuff. I'm rooting for him to make it as a guy that at that level of prospect goes to Western Kentucky. I root for kids like that. So, and he's had a difficult journey there. So, he'd be another guy that I'd put on that category.
Well, so we mentioned Jalen Green and Kuminga from the G League Ignite. I've seen a lot of high school highlights of Isaiah Todd, and I watched him play a little bit. He's like fringe first round from what I've seen. What do you think about Isaiah Todd? Do you think he's going to pan out to be a good player?
I don't know. I'm not huge on Isaiah Todd. I know a lot of people like him. The thing is, like, I think this experience, serves him well. He's got the long wingspan. He's got the length. I just, I don't know that there's anything that I love that he particularly does. Great. I know that he could potentially be a guy that has length and could shoot it from the outside, and so you say, all right, maybe that's what he is at the next level. I don't know that we see that. So we might see him as a specialist and he sticks on a roster. So he could be a good rotational guy in that role that comes in. I mean, you think about like the impact Bobby Portis is having in these playoffs, for instance, not making that same comparison, but just saying that, like, I mean, I guess I am, but I think the point isn't that he's Bobby Portis. The point is that that's the kind of role that maybe he could play at the next level.
Mm-hmm. Well, we did want to ask, obviously, like we said, Carolina and Duke fans. So there's a couple names we wanted to ask you about. The first one I want to say is Day'Ron Sharpe, because I've seen him fringe first round. I'd love for him to go first round, late first round. So I was wondering what you think about him.
Day'Ron Sharpe actually was working out the same workout that that excuse me, that I was at down in Southern California with. He's been working out with those other guys, that crew that I was mentioning. So Keon Johnson, Davion Mitchell. When I went down, he was not working out with them when I went down there. But has shed weight, so that was a big deal for him. I think has some potential at the next level, and they're excited about him. About what he could become, and his work ethic has been great thus far. And so, again, the league is sort of in a different place now, than it was in the past. So you have to sort of gauge that. But his ability to step outside, that thing in workouts, that he's shown his ability that as an outside shooter. And if that comes along, then could be a guy that makes a difference on the next level. Again, it's weird because you get into a lot of these guys where situationally, if they're in the right spot, could be huge. And the other thing is, and I've explained this to people, and actually Chad Ford and I talked about this on his podcast, that you have superstars, but if a guy's not a superstar on your team, what role does he play as a specialist? In college, you can do multiple things and be rewarded as such. Oh, this guy's good at a lot of different things, or he's a pretty good scorer, but he's also good, at other things. And they need that at the college level. And you sort of fit into a system, whether it's defensively, offensively, what have you. Mm-hmm. But in the NBA, like, are you an outstanding backup lead guard? Are you an outstanding, shooter to bring in? Because the thing is, like, if you're a pretty good shooter and you're, a guy who could potentially bring the ball up the floor, and you're an okay rebounder, like, they don't necessarily need that in the league. Like, it's funny that, so there's been there's a new trend coming, but like, so you have all these specialists that come in because it's like, oh, I want a 3-and-D guy that I can bring in, because you can get one of the best shooters in the world who also defends. So if the guy does nothing else, like, at least you have that. The funny thing is, and we're sort of seeing that, in these playoffs, is that you still do need some role players that know how to play the game, though. Like, they may not be the absolute best shooters, but these guys can come in and know how to score, know how to impact games. They might not be the best at any one thing, but the trend is sort of flipping, because the league has gone with specialists for so long that now guys that just know how to play also have an advantage too. So, so it's tough to gauge, but I think we're looking at, I think we're looking at a guy again that rotationally could be a solid player and has the potential to be pretty good, but it's not like I'm looking at Daron Sharp as like he's going to be a superstar at the next level or anything like that.
You said they're transitioning away from specialists in the league. I think that contributes more to like positionless basketball and a lot more small ball. Do you think that kind of plays into it? Like the new way the game's played now, more threes, faster pace?
Yeah. Well, the thing is everybody's got to shoot. So you start there. And so I think that plays a role. I think what's interesting is positionless basketball and teams really, what I think a lot of people mean by that is like teams are going so much smaller now. But I say that, but I'm in sort of disagreement in the general consensus that that's the best way to play, because I also look at it like I think you need a strong lead guard, and the difference that somebody as your leader and coach on the floor, it doesn't necessarily have to be classic point guard in the same sense of the word, but I think the Suns are a great example of that. You look at what Chris Paul brings to the table and the advantage that the Suns have when he just again calms everything down. Controls the game at they play at the pace he wants to play. They get into their offensive sets, all that kind of stuff. So, there's a lot of talk like, oh, this guy can handle, this guy can do this. I mean, you guys are going to be set with that with LaMelo being sort of the same way, like a guy that's going to be able to bring the ball up the floor. And he does other things. So that's great. And so you can sort of look at him and say, well, what position is this guy, in a way? But the biggest thing that you'll benefit from, can this guy bring the ball up the floor and get my team into sets and all that kind of stuff? And I think, so you need a great lead guard. And I also think on the flip side, think about what like Joel Embiid has been able to do, because so many other teams aren't used to guarding bigs and other teams are playing small. Like everybody wants centers now that can switch on defense, rim run, Clint Capella's of the world. But here's the problem. You have Clint Capella or even, John Collins can be a new age 5 kind of thing. And I love John Collins, but he's athletic. He's versatile. He steps outside, shoots 15 footers. Attacks the rim with a vengeance, all these things, but like rebounds well. But the problem is that what happens when a big comes in that somebody wants to establish? Now, you may not see post-ups because they don't run that kind of offense much anymore. But when you do get a big that just posts up on occasion, I mean, you can think about how a guy like that could now come back to dominate. So I do think that we've had this cycle for a while of positionless basketball, which I think a lot of people just mean they play smaller and that they're bigs, handle the ball and they're a little bit smaller. And they go with these small lineups, but not everybody has a Draymond Green that can be a guy that can bring the ball up. Nobody has that, basically, who can bring the ball up the floor and also guard opposing bigs. And so you want to look, I think more than anything, it's almost like positionless defenders, if you will. If you can guard multiple positions on the defensive end, that changes what you can do offensively, because now you can put 4 out, 5 out shooters and stuff and just wreak havoc on other teams' defense and force guys like, Frank Kaminsky to go have to, if that's when teams start, hunting for him in the pick and roll and all. Yeah. But if you have a 5-man that can switch on defense, you're great. But now but the other thing I'll say is like, it's weird because this year we saw, a lot of people ask about Luka Garza and guys like Drew Timme and stuff and what those guys are going to do at the NBA level. And the one thing I say is if a team a block, like you. Sorry about that. Drew Timme, Drew Timme was eating guys alive in the post because nobody develops post defenders anymore, And so that to me is interesting. And then Luka Garza, same thing. So I think we may end up seeing a shift. Not going to see it this year or next year maybe, but I think over time, with some of these skilled bigs, I think guys are going to start to learn how to score in the post better. And I think we're going to start to see a shift back where you start to see, why wouldn't I take advantage when I'm playing a team like the Hawks? Why wouldn't I throw a guy in the post, get the ball down to him and just get easy buckets and cause them to get into foul trouble? I mean, even Giannis in a way, I almost think of as like the best center in the league. I mean, look at what Giannis is doing when he's getting into the paint. Like that's when he's causing his damage and stuff. And so really, yeah, maybe he does it from the perimeter sometimes and when he's going downhill, but when Giannis can get himself, and you even look in this finals, like a lot of it is Giannis isn't going ISO because that's when they can bring the help. He gives the ball up. Now he gets it back when he's almost in the post. Like he's acting almost as a center in these games. So, So I think in a way we may start to see some of that where these bigs now take on an expanded role and maybe it shifts back to how it was, years ago. Never the same with that slow down offense and just this prodding thing. I mean, obviously you're going to see a lot still switching defensively, pick and roll game. You need to be able to rim run and all that. But I also think we're going to see more post ups, or at least reposts, if you will, in the mid post. I think you're going to see more of that in the league.
So you mentioned guys getting attacked on pick and rolls. I think the worst person to defend a pick and roll in this draft is Matt Hurt.
There
So do you like any Duke guys?
No, I mean, listen, Matt Hurt obviously is a specialist. You have a guy with that kind of length who could shoot it. I think there is going to be room for guys like the NBA is always going to love a guy like that and likely find a way to get him in. I mean, the Jaylen Johnson thing is interesting because I will say, talking to people who know people inside the program say that, and I've tried to make this stance from what I understand. Like he really was, from the people that I've talked to, like he really was struggling emotionally. And I think about think about it. Like we had this one and done set up for years where guys were just expected. They're going to come into college, do the one and done and go. Like we all were impacted by COVID and the social anxiety that the strain the pandemic put on everyone. And so, I have 4 children myself, and I saw the impact that it had on my 2 older girls, and, stuff not being the same and stuff not meeting expectations. They're in high school, and it just wasn't the high school experience, and they feel like they were missing out on things. And I think about the one and done guys, and look, no one's going to feel bad for guys that are superstar high school prospects that go to college for a few months, and then get to play at these elite schools and then get to be high draft picks and make millions of dollars. No one's feeling bad for them, but they're still people. And I think that what happened in a lot of these cases was the experience wasn't the same in terms of going. And now all of a sudden you go and experience these huge crowds, and you go and experience the college life. And I'm going to parties and drinking. And I know, I know a friend of mine has a son that was a walk-on at a D1 school, not a great program, but a D1 school. And like just the walk-ons, how hard it was for them. Usually you get to walk around campus and everybody looks at you and goes, oh, that guy's on the basketball team, and his buddies love it and goes to all the parties and the girls love it. And like, that to say that that's not a part of the college experience, or that why guys are going, would be so misleading. Yes, of course. I mean, you talked about the money. We know that happens. We know about the influence from people that, that want to benefit from these kids and all this. But I look at a guy like a Jaylen Johnson and think like, man, like he thought that he'd be going to Duke, playing at Cameron in front of great crowds, being the man on campus. Everybody loves him, gets to learn from Coach K, all these things. And instead you're going to practice every day and you're just getting crushed by your coaches and all. I don't know if you guys have ever read A Season on the Brink, but it's the book about Bobby Knight that John Feinstein wrote. It's a legendary book. And it literally, the biggest thing that the book talks about, I mean, it's a famous book, but like they talk about, it's the year before Indiana won the national championship, but just like these kids are like going to practice every day, and it's the winter time, and it's dreary and it's bleak, and it's just this long season. It's like, and so, yeah, they go out on game day and get the attention. And I'm sure they don't even talk too much about the partying stuff that they're doing, but it's like Bobby Knight is just killing these kids and all this. And so it's not just about Bobby Knight as a person, but just about the experience of playing college basketball, wintertime and all that, the depression that sets in. So I don't know Jaylen Johnson personally, so I can't speak to that, but knowing people who know him have told me like he really was struggling this year. And so, and everyone made a big deal and said he went to multiple high schools, all that. Well, a lot of kids do that kind of thing. And so this idea, like it wasn't fake, that he was really dealing with it from what I understand. And so I would just say, like, I'm rooting for the kid to be all right. And then second of all, obviously you want to see him have a good career and not flame out. And hopefully he gets the help he needs emotionally. But I've seen the toll it takes on so many young people. And then you take away the college experience. To me, it was no surprise then that Kentucky and Duke had their struggles this year. Everybody wants to ask that question. What happened? It's like, well, these guys are used to being one and dones, and they're used to all the attention and all that kind of stuff. Now, all of a sudden, you take away the college experience, you take away the fun, and like all they will now. I mean, before they're like, all right, well, cool. I'll go to Duke for 5 months. I'll go to Duke for 6 months, go to a couple classes, have some fun, whatever. And it's like, you take that away from them, and it's like, why do I care? And so when the apathy starts to set in, and you could say that's a character issue for the kid, or you could blame the coaching staff, but I don't think anyone was ready to deal with what we all had to deal with this year.
No, and especially when Duke struggles like that, you're playing in an empty Cameron. the first game you watched in Cameron, it was so weird, like how loud the rim was. It was really odd. And when you're at a program like Duke getting so highly scrutinized, having that awful record we had this year, it was a bad mix. And I'm not saying it's all Jaylen Johnson's fault. I mean, I just don't like him as a prospect that much. It's the shooting that bothers me.
Yeah. I mean, listen, there's of course questions about it. The one thing I will say is that it's so interesting because people ask all the time, like, I don't understand why this kid wasn't drafted higher than that. Well, and I said, first thing you have to look at is that NBA teams most importantly care about the number one statistic metric, very measurable, is age. That's the number one thing. If you tell a kid, like, if you say, oh, this kid's 6'9" with a 7-foot wingspan, and by the way, he's 14 years old, like, that's what appeals to, like, that's what NBA teams like love. They salivate over the idea, and it makes sense because on one level, it's like, all right, kid's 19 years old, and what's he going to be in 3 years? And that was the argument this past year's draft when it was Obi Toppin and James Wiseman. It's like Obi Toppin clearly James Wiseman played like 3 games, but just the idea that Obi Toppin was dominant and did so many things well at Dayton, and it was like clear to see that he had outstanding athleticism and obviously his basketball IQ is really strong, and he can pass the ball, and he shot it well from 3 and all these things. But at the same time, Obi Toppin's 22 and James Wiseman's 19. So you say, all right, you're not just comparing the two now. You're saying, what will James Wiseman be in 3 years? And so I say a lot of times these NBA guys, like, they care about what's a player's ceiling. And so for a guy like Jaylen Johnson or Zaire Williams, who you feel like, all right, they didn't perform at the level we expected them to their freshman year, the NBA guys are going off of, well, we saw them at EYBL, or we saw them at the high school level at AAU, what have you. And we know what these guys are capable of if they're playing free and loose and they're not restricted by a system. And we can sort of see what their potential is. Again, against other elite prospects, plus through USA Basketball, which has been huge and where a lot of these guys get to know these guys. So I say all of that to say that I think really what happens is you look at a guy like Jaylen Johnson and you have questions. And of course I do too about him as a prospect. And you start to say about the shooting and all that. A lot of it for the NBA guys comes down to, okay, but is he the same guy he was in high school? Because if I can get that version of Jaylen Johnson, then this is why I'm going to take him with the top 15 pick. And whether that's right or wrong, I'm not making that case. The other thing I would say for people to let them know, and that I've been privy enough to sort of learn as I've gotten to know guys and deal in this for years, is that the other big trend that's changed, and that I think is fascinating for a lot of people, is the interview process. Like, scouts and teams care so much about the character of guys, and they want to know if guys are legit. And look, a superstar might get away with a few things, but if you're trying to make it as a starter or rotational guy that's not a superstar, and certainly an end of the bench guy, you better be a guy that they believe in, that you're going to put the work in, that you're all about team, because those things pay off. And they might not show up on, of course, people will use the cliche like in a box score, but they want good team guys. They know that it's a long season, that you're going to go through trials and tribulations. And especially we see what's happened the last couple of years, and truncated schedule and injuries and all these. They want good guys and guys that work their asses off. And like at the NBA level, that is very important. So yeah, I think that's how these guys like Jaylen Johnson sort of get evaluated differently than I think the older prospects do.
Well, we don't want to keep you too long, but the last thing
I'm fun, guys. I don't care.
Oh, yes. Well, thank you. But the last thing I wanted to ask you personally is, NBA draft guru Adam Stanco, give me 2 or 3 names that you have been really high on in the past drafts, any year, that have really panned out. Like, what are your best takes or your best predictions? Oh,
man. Well, we hit on a couple of them. One was Donovan Mitchell. Got a chance to see Donovan Mitchell at as they were preparing him for his team workouts. He has this famous workout with the Jazz where he killed it, and the Jazz people were like, we're not telling anybody about this workout. Mm-hmm. They literally are the front office guy. I've talked to guys. A friend of mine was in their front office. He's left since, but he like the story goes, like he wasn't in the front office even actually at the time. He got in there after. But as the story goes, basically we're like, we are not talking about this workout to anyone. But No, I saw him, and I just knew in his workouts, his ability to shoot the basketball, his work ethic. But the one thing I point out to people that's just wild was like he had this charisma that we're all seeing now. These leadership qualities that like you didn't really see at Louisville. They didn't have the chance to show that. I mean, he was playing with other talented guys, and obviously playing for Patino and all this stuff. But I think more than all that, he had been a baseball player for a long time in the early part of his career and all. He's just a great kid. And there was something about being in those workouts about how hard he worked and about like how the other guys gravitated towards him. Because a lot of times they're in workouts, it's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 guys. And, they're doing shooting drills or they're going 2-on-2 in a half court. And then they split the half court in half. Like you can only play on the left side of the court. Let's go to work. And it's like, you just see in this enclosed setup, like how guys can operate in small spaces and stuff. And the thing that you saw was like he roots on his teammates, but most guys do that and it comes off like corny or forced. Mm-hmm. And he did it in a way that was like uplifting. Like other people in the gym are like, oh yeah, I want to work hard for this guy. And so I just knew he had something just absolutely special that just stood out. He was one. Jason Tatum, I thought again, like should have been in the discussion for number one pick that year. Giannis was another one that I had said. I mean, I have misses too. I don't like to talk about.
Yeah, what's your biggest miss?
Oof. Big Anthony Bennett guy?
I thought, what's that? No, I wasn't a huge Anthony Bennett guy. I was, I was a big, I thought Jimmer Fredette would be much better than he was.
Don't hurt me like that. I'm a huge BYU fan.
Yeah, no, I thought Jimmer, because the thing was, I thought the league was trending that way, and I thought they were allowing guards. I mean, look, we talked about it with Lillard, and we saw with Steph. Steph was another guy that I was like screaming from the rafters, like he's generational. Like that guy has to be highly considered here with the draft. Another one that I was screaming about it. I mean, I don't know if you guys remember that draft, but the Timberwolves took 2 point guards ahead of him.
Johnny
Rubio
Flynn.
and Johnny Flynn. And also in one of those picks, they traded, I want to say Mike Miller and Randy Foye, maybe. So people always say all the time, like, well, Timberwolves, like the point was anyone in the league. My point was not only did the Timberwolves botch that clearly, but But even, I mean, everybody was enamored with Ricky Rubio, excuse me. But even more so, the rest of the teams in the league had the opportunity to go and get Steph Curry because that was the going price. Mike Miller and Randy, I think it was that. Maybe it was Alan Ray. I remember it was a Villanova guard. But that was the going price to get into that. That draft was not highly thought of at the time. And there were a ton of point guards. Ty Lawson was in that draft and all.
Oh, yeah.
So, and also, what was his name from Arizona, who I could not stand as a prospect. And I argued with people about it and all that. I think the Knicks took 9. Jordan, why am I drawing a blank? If you guys want to look it up, whatever Steph Curry's got to us.
Arizona, you said?
Yeah. Why am I?
Jordan Hill.
Jordan Hill goes. So again, I would argue with people that the Knicks should have gone up and got Steph Curry. Meanwhile, everybody's like, well, they didn't get him. I'm like, yeah, they could have. It was like
the price was not that high.
It was easy to trade up. Exactly. The price was not that high. So yeah, Steph was another one. I mean, Trae Young. Well, but again, I think that's, Trae is still, you're talking about a top 10 pick. John Collins, that was his guy that I was really high on.
Were you high on Nikola Jokic too? This is insane.
No. No, I did not have Nikola Jokic that. I didn't even, it's sort of like, okay, if he pans out, he pans out. I could never in a million years have seen what Joker was going to be. But, for me, it's interesting because a lot of it is situational though. Like how would you guys rate Devontae Graham as a prospect, right? Like think about things in that regard. Obviously had his struggles this year, but you think about like last year and stuff, what he was doing. And I saw Devontae Graham again. He was working at Don's workouts, and Devontae, I got the chance to watch him and Grayson Allen work out for hours together against each other. And I'm thinking, this is crazy. Like, two of the best players in college basketball. And here they are getting a chance to work out in this little gym. And it was kind of funny to see it. But I'll say, like, it's interesting. Sometimes I feel like you can learn a lot from watching the tape, and then other times the opinion sways, sometimes in the wrong direction. Sometimes you have to go back and say, no, well, what did I see on tape? Like, he's a great kid, or I like him, but what did I see on tape? So it gets kind of interesting, but I'm fascinated by the whole process in general. It's always been something that I've been intrigued by. I was a teenager. I'll tell you this quick story, but I was as a teenager, and I used to read Street and Smith magazine. You didn't have a chance to even watch tape on these guys, and you could learn about them and try to watch as many games as I could. And so I'm back in high school. So we're talking like, early 90s, right? And Timberwolves were bad every year. I mean, even beyond what Hornets had been, last year. We're talking just terrible franchise.
Yeah.
And my dad had met an executive with the T-Wolves on a plane. And keep in mind, I'm a high school kid, probably a little bit arrogant about things, but my dad was like, oh, my son's really big into the draft. And the guy was nice enough. I look back now and think, like, for a while I thought about this. It was like making fun of the guy. Now I see the story and I'm like, well, that was nice of him. But the guy was like, yeah, we'll take input from anybody, like, if he wants to talk to us. Now, granted, at the time, think about it, Timberwolves are terrible. So they're drafting like at the top of the first round, top of the second round. So they pretty much have an idea of who they're taking. I'm not going to hit them with anybody crazy, but so the guy was nice enough to talk to me about prospects. And that's probably what really made me feel like, oh, okay, I could learn some of this stuff. And the guy like was asking me about players that I had in mind. And I was mentioning guys and he didn't know them. And I was like stunned. And again, they were dropping at the top of their draft and all that stuff. And for me, even at the time, like, it wasn't that I knew a ton about these guys, but I've been reading about them and all that kind of stuff. But I was like, oh, I'm stumping this guy that's an executive with the T-Wolves. And it wasn't so much, I mean, part of it told me that the organization was kind of inept if this guy didn't even know, here's this 15, 16-year-old kid or whatever, like giving him names. But I think the other part of it was just that, it's always been fun for me that it's something that you can do. Like, you can go and look at guys and find them and say, like, oh, I really like this kid. I think he could be something, Fred VanVleet, for instance. Like, you can look at it and go like, oh, I think that guy can play at the next level, all this. And then, goes undrafted and then, ends up becoming a star at the NBA level. And I think the other big thing I would tell people about the draft process, though, also is like, it's really hard to get a gauge on some of the things that really matter, that determine ultimately how good guys will be. Like, you can see what their potential is. And that's why I think it's so important to like scout the high school level and understand what their ceiling could be. And that's where you can see, all right, why do NBA teams think so highly of this guy? I didn't see it at the college level. All right, well, go look at his high school tape. Oh, okay, he's capable of doing that. It's like what guys did in the bubble, I always say, or in empty gyms or in practices. Like, guy could be special at that level, but then they have to do it at the NBA level. But what could he be if everything breaks right? And then the other thing is, you just don't know a guy's work ethic and what kind of person he is. And that makes a huge difference. Do guys want to play with him? But does he push other guys, and does he bust his tail? And like, when you saw that from Donovan Mitchell, you're like, all right, maybe he's undersized, but this guy's going to be a star because he's got this crazy charisma and he's got this crazy work ethic. And that, like, there's no way guys aren't going to enjoy playing with him. He's going to be a leader from day one. And then the shooting and all those other things, those will come around. The next thing you know, he's breaking 3-point records, his rookie year and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah. So.
All right. So we'll end on this note. You say your proudest moment is Chris Mullin praised you for a slip screen. Tell us about that.
So when I worked at ESPN, thank you for asking that too. When I worked at ESPN, I had the opportunity to really get to meet, a lot of heroes and things like that. And I have through the years, and to become friends with some of these people is just, mind boggling. Got to know Flip Saunders, while I was there, Seth Greenberg, Jerry Rice, just some other people. It was crazy experience. But, and any guys that you interview, I know you had Kevin Stewart on, like, talking about their ESPN days. We'll tell you some random ESPN crazy stories. It really is like the SportsCenter commercials, or at least was, I know, before the pandemic. But so a buddy of mine was a I used to play ball with all the time. This guy, Greg Pike, great player. Was actually a big high school prospect, or a really good high school player in Florida. But Piker, as we all called him, he's a producer. He used to produce inside the NBA, and then at ESPN did a lot of NBA stuff. Still on the NBA project now. But Piker and I would play ball together and all this stuff. We're both big hoop heads and all. There's a bunch of leagues, and there was leagues all the time at ESPN and stuff that were a lot of fun and great players. But so anyway, one day I'm at home, and he just calls me and says, "Hey, you got to come to LA Fitness. John Barry and Chris Mullin want to get a game of 2-on-2 in." So I'm like, I am there. And so as quick as I possibly, keep in mind, I'm older than you guys, obviously. And so for me, like Chris Mullin's like, not just like St. John's legend, but then like him with the Warriors. And I saw him play at Madison Square Garden against the Knicks when he was like in his heyday. It's Run TMC, and it's him, Tim Hardaway, Mitch Richmond. And then like, and also, plays for the Pacers and Larry Bird's there. Like, just at Dream Team, like this is Dream Team or Chris Mullin, like one of the greatest players ever. Like I got a Hall of Famer, all this. So I could not get there quick enough. So we ended up playing 2-on-2 at an LA Fitness. Put it this way, there are guys on the other side of the court. I don't think they even realized that like who it was. They just saw like 4 older guys playing ball and stuff, just playing. Although they definitely recognized real quick when they saw that John Barry and Chris Mullin did not miss. And like I said, my buddy Piker is a really good player too. He's like a mini Mullin, actually. He's a lefty. He's about 6'1", just shoots it like slow moving, but gets to his spots and like does not miss as a lefty, and really good passer. So yeah, so we were playing the game, and I was playing with Chris Mullin, and I go to set a screen on John Barry. And then I just slipped it instead of holding the screen still. And then Chris Mullin throws me one of his like legendary, passes, and I finish, and he's like, "Oh, look at this, slips the screen. This kid knows how to play." And I was like, okay, like you could have just killed me then. Cause I was like, there's nothing better in my entire life. Like it's better than the day I got married or had kids, I'm like, no, just play it. I'm playing. But, no, it was an amazing experience. So yeah, I felt very lucky to get the chance to play with him. So, and by the way, I got to know Jay Williams through my time. You're a Duke fan.
Mm-hmm.
And so, Jay's a friend of mine now. Like even that experience like was crazy. Like watching Jay as somebody like I admired and was a fan of, and then getting to know Jay, who's a really, really good guy. And then even, I had a chance to play with Jay one time, maybe a couple times, but one time for sure. I stole the ball from him. And now granted, he's, hobbled and still dealing. Still in unbelievable shape though. I stole the ball, gave him a hard time, all that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah, you have to.
How would you describe your pickup game?
Listen, I'm gonna overinflate. It's the thing I'm probably most well now. It's toast. My knees are terrible, and I'm 45 years old, and I never get sleep because of the kids. But no, I'm I could shoot it. I like to describe myself as a really good passer, and I can handle. I'm a lead guard that people like playing with. So. The guys at ESPN would make fun because I'm known for like all no look passes. Like I love fancy passes. I love, that route. So, the guys that pass really well always excite me way more than the LaMelo Balls of the world.
So you're tier 1.
You said it. No, I appreciate it. It's funny because I did. If I say that stuff, then I'll get crushed from guys that can really play. It's the thing that I love most. Like honestly, if you told me anything career wise, whatever, if I give it all up tomorrow to get, just a chance to play tomorrow, like at Cameron, like in a Duke Virginia game or something, like I would give it all. Like there's nothing in the world I love more than, everybody knows I'm married to basketball. It's my first love. And I absolutely love it. And I worked really hard at it when I was younger, all that, but I care about it. So the guys that work their asses off, and the guys that are passionate, I think that stands out. I also think those become the best players. So, so that's how I'd probably describe my pickup game, is that I was pretty good. I guess I was okay. I was okay. Let's call it that.
You haven't made it in pickup basketball until you've played at a Mormon church.
Oh, yeah, we're big Mormon church players.
I have done that. I have done that.
So, there you go.
Yeah, I've played it. I've played pickup just about everywhere. So yeah, and throughout my life, I've gotten, I've played with the guys that show up, with like, wearing like jeans that just come right off the street in the city game. You know what I mean? Like no shirt, nobody wants to touch the guy. That kind of thing. Big elbows
coming.
Oh yeah, guys that don't know how to play whatsoever. I've played pickup with, a lot of guys that don't know how to play. A lot of guys that do. So I've definitely played pickup with just about everywhere at every venue, and that's cool that you guys have played some. I mean, listen, fundamentally sound. Yeah. The Mormon church guys, they'll get mad if you're not taking care of your fundamentals either, or if you're not passing the ball, right?
Yep.
But everybody's Jimmer.
Yeah, that's what it's turning into. So
yeah.
But all right, well, hey Adam, this was so fun. Thank you so much for your time. Go follow Adam at Naismith Lives. I don't know where that came from, but
yeah, I had a website at one point in time that was a basketball website, and I called it. Yeah, I mean, James Naismith invented the game. You gotta. Yeah. He lives on in infamy. Or lives on forever in memory. Guys, I just want to say thank you. This has been a lot of fun. Really enjoyed it. I get to do luckily a bunch of these kinds of things, and you guys are really good at what you do. So thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Adam.
Hey, thank you. Take care, man.
All right. Thanks.